Before I get started, just a quick thank you to everybody for the warm welcome back to the world of Path of Exile on YouTube. I've definitely missed bringing stuff like this to you guys. But here's the plan from now forward. This will probably be the last video showcasing this build. I don't want to put in the immense amount of work and time to have a well-edited full guide video with a full written guide, path of building, with all the leveling notes and everything just for this interaction to end up being patched out for 3.22. So I'm still going to go over all of my gear, all the gems, the passive tree. You will find a path of building file in the description that will have notes on the gear options, gems, everything that you should need to put this build together. If this interaction does survive and is still around in 3.22, then I will give this build the full Path of Walking Simulator treatment, and it will be officially dubbed version 7 of the build series. But for now, let me show you where I've ended up. I said I'll go over everything that you should need to know, and then we'll just have to see what happens. As usual, we're going to run just a very normal kind of default map. It's nothing special, nothing difficult, but it is still tier 16, just so you can see where this build has ended up.
Just need a moment to catch my bearings.
On to the boss. Ooh, that is a tough essence monster there too. Okay. And there you go. I mean, that is pretty darn smooth. I am honestly very, very happy with where this ended up. I'm going to completely forget to come back in here later after I'm done recording this video to finish these rituals, but no big deal. Okay, so where have we ended up? Let's check the gear first. There's 3 required uniques that you have to have. Of course, our Replica Doedre's Damning, so that we can get our curse limit to 0. That is the entire way that the build is able to function and recover all of the life and mana that we spend. Really, the only other important mod on this ring is the all resistance mod. Make sure you just get one with a good roll there. Next, you're going to need your Eye of Innocence amulet. You want to make sure that you quality this up to 20% with turbulent catalysts, so that the fire damage taken mod is increased from 100 to 120. The more fire damage we take, the more frequently our cast when damage taken gems will trigger. I do have this anointed with high voltage, which honestly for the build is a great enchant for as cheap, for a great anointment for as cheap as it is for oil costs. Then you need your Katava's Thirst helmet. You can ignore the +2 level of socketed lightning gems. This is just a random one that I happen to have in my stash. It does not need to be corrupted. The only interesting enchant outside of potentially ones that will lower the or will give a increased reservation efficiency for either of the auras that we use would be the enchant that lets Volatile Dead consume an additional corpse. That enchant may change the build slightly if you can get it. I'm not sure just how much better it is. But that is, you don't have to go fishing or pay extra for an enchant. Just get the helmet and you're good to go. The next, not required, but recommended unique to go after, there's a couple different gloves you can go after. So Hands of the High Templar, because what you're looking for out of your glove slot is at least one source of curse enemies on hit. And there are a lot of Hands of the High Templar out there, and because they can roll 5 implicit modifiers, a lot of them have multiple curse on hit mods. The other special line you'd want to look for is the base spell critical strike chance, because we are a crit build. That does provide a very solid boost to our crit rate. The gloves also come with increased life and resistance, so that's pretty good. There is another option you can go with. That is Asenath's Gentle Touch. These have, in their explicit mods, Cursed with Temporal Change on hit. And they also give some nice flat life and flat mana, which is not to be overlooked on this build. You don't get the benefit of any of the other mods on there because we don't actually inflict curses, so we don't get any of the explosions or anything like that. But you can also get a corrupted pair of these with another curse on hit or spell crit. So those are just two really solid options for getting curse on hit out of your gloves slot. Now, if you only have one, let's say you just have a pair of Asenath's Gentle Touch, or you've only got one source of curse on hit from your gloves, then your other ring slot is where you can get another one. Now, this is a ring from Delve that dropped with flammability on hit. You can also use something like, I do have one in here, yes? Maybe I don't. Did I move it somewhere? I did move it somewhere. There it is. You can also get something like the Mark of Submission ring, which just lets you put a curse on hit in there. But honestly, you get no other mods with this one. So definitely grab a Delve ring with a curse or an influenced ring that's rolled to have a curse on it. And because you get other stats along with it too, other than just the straight curse on hit mod. Now, I have 2 on my gloves already. I could probably do without this one as well. 2 different sources of curse on hit is probably enough. 3 is probably overkill. So try with just 2 if you have 2. It'll probably feel perfectly fine. I have been going with 3. I mean, it's a decent ring anyway that I don't really, it's got res and life and chaos resistance, so it still, works just as a normal ring. But don't feel like you have to go for 3 curses. If you get 2, that will feel like enough. The weapons, what you're looking for is either +2 fire spell gems or all spell gems, flat damage to spells, or crit mods, so crit chance for spells or global crit multi. Everything else, belt, boots, armor, you just need all the life and resistances that you need, and that's it. That'll cover your bases. Your flasks can be whatever you want. Of course, I like having a diamond flask. A crit chance is great for that, but a quartz flask is also going to be very good because phasing will make this build feel so much better when you can move through things. But you don't need a life flask. If you're in combat, you're recovering so much life that you're either full life or you're dead. There really is not a whole lot of in between. In terms of jewels, you're just looking for stuff like maximum life, crit multi. A source of knockback on hit can be kind of funny but also useful because you're hitting so often, you're constantly knocking stuff back and kind of like pushing stuff away, which can be a pseudo defensive layer. With Abyss Jewels, you're looking for flat damage to spells, of course nice implicits like Corrupted Blood, things like that. Again, life, crit, flat damage. I do have 1 cluster jewel in here. Sadist is the important node on this one because we are shocking We are shocking, we are igniting, we are chilling. So we get the full 60% benefit. 60% elemental damage is just a lot for a single node. Widespread destruction is also okay. We do get some benefit from area of effect, so having that is still good, and 20 elemental damage is fine. And then Prismatic Heart is also a good one as well, because we are limited in our gear slots to get resistances, so this does help us get to resistance cap. Now the gems, my final setup here is, of course, in the helm, our main damage. This one that is triggering has a 50% chance to trigger every time Ball Lightning triggers, because it has a mana cost of 100. The Ball Lightning triggers twice every time the cast when damage taken gem goes off. So two 50% chances works out to a 75% chance. So we have a 75% chance of any time we trigger a level 1 cast when damage taken, that we will also trigger this level 21 4-link Volatile Dead. I have this linked with Spell Cascade support, which normally for Volatile Dead, especially in a setup like this, is one of the best multipliers in the game. So Volatile Dead by default consumes 3 corpses. So that's it. You cast it, 3 corpses go pop, pop, pop. You get 3 balls. Spell Cascade triples that. So it will do 9 balls now. So even with the 31% less damage mod, because you're getting triple the balls, it ends up being a 107% more damage multiplier. Now, there are a couple potential things that could go awry with this setup that I haven't been able to fully test or really get a grip on if it's actually happening or not. Number one is that because we are using trigger bots and they're constantly moving around, the Volatile Dead may not always be being cast where all the corpses are. Because if we're doing 9 balls at a time, triggered twice because of the trigger bots, that is 18 balls every time that the helm triggers. And we're generating 20 corpses. We will never have we have a maximum outside of course, enemies that we kill in the map. We are only generating 18 or 20 corpses every time the cast when damage taken gems go off. But I've noticed times where the Volatile Dead is not being cast where the corpses are, so we may not be getting the full benefit of the Spell Cascade support. The other thing that could be going wrong is that Volatile Dead has a maximum of 60 orbs at any given time. And if we're casting 18, 3 casts already get you to 54. So if you already have all 54 of those 3 out there and you try to cast a 4th time, now you're only getting 6 instead of the full 18. And in full combat, full ramp, this cast when damage taken support is triggering something like 4 times a second. So if you have a 75% chance, then on average you could be triggering this Volatile Dead 3 times a second. So 54 orbs every second. But if you have a cap of 60, and the orbs take 2/3 of a second to spawn and rise out of the ground before they will start to auto-target enemies, then there's a good chance during max ramp that you are overwriting balls before they have a chance to actually seek something out and explode. Now in max ramp, everything else is also still doing damage. So things are still dying. You just saw it in the video or in the map that just got run. Things are still dying. And in a true single target scenario, you're not going to be at full ramp. So I still think you're getting the benefit of the Spell Cascade. But there is there's a possibility that something like increased critical strikes or increased critical damage or even elemental focus could be a better link than spell cascade support here. I've tried all of them. None of them really feel any better than another one. And all else being equal, in a build that relies on hitting things as much as possible, I'm going to go with the one that generates the most hits, which is going to be spell cascade support. Next, we have Concentrated Effect. This is also very nice for Volatile Dead because the area of the explosion is kind of irrelevant when the Volatile Dead orbs will seek out the enemies and explode right in their face. So you get the benefit of the big more area damage multiplier, but don't really have to worry about the downside of the less area of effect. And finally, I have Awakened Fire Penetration support here, but a normal Fire Penetration support is fine. Because we don't have the benefit of being able to use curses, we're missing a huge source of methods to reduce the resistances of enemies. And if you can't reduce them, penetrate them. So this is where we can kind of break through enemy resistances that way. Now, the 100 mana cost requirement to trigger this we get from Ball Lightning. This is in the chest. Now, this very specifically, you could ignore the +1 level that I've got from one of my weapons, just the base level of the gem, it must be level 4. If you go any higher, the level requirement for the gem will be 40, which means a level 1 cast when damage taken won't trigger it. If you go any lower than level 4, then the mana cost will be less than 100 and won't trigger the helm. So Ball Lightning must be base level exactly level 4. And not only exactly level 4, I have a very specific setup of links in this that are, in my opinion, the best combination of functional while also giving enough of a cost multiplier to make sure we hit 100 mana. So that is Combustion support. So Combustion has the nice -10 to fire resistance, but really the 25% extra chance to ignite means Ball Lightning being our biggest hitter, our most number of hits on any cast that we do, will generate more ignites. More ignites triggers the amulet, which will trigger back damage, so everything goes off more frequently. Slower projectile support is along that same line. The slower the Ball Lightning moves, the more times it can hit an enemy before it moves out of the range that it is able to hit that enemy. Greater multiple projectile support, which I will just refer to as GMP from here on out because that's a mouthful. This does not generate any more hits against single target, but an incredible amount of hits whenever you're dealing with packs of enemies. It's also a big 150% cost multiplier. This is a big factor in helping us get to that 100 mana cost. Then finally, of course, a level 1 cast when damage taken support. We want this, and frankly all of the other cast when damage taken supports should all be level 1 because you want them going off as frequently as possible. So Ball Lightning with those 4 links, plus we have to path down here to Forethought, which gives 10% increased mana cost, and we get 5% increased cost in the node before that. So this 15% increased cost, plus all of these links here, gives us a Ball Lightning cost of exactly 100 mana. Any less than what I have here, the cost is not going to be 100, and you want to make sure you don't have any other sources anywhere else of reduced or lower cost of mana. We need this to be 100%. Also, when it comes to Volatile Dead, is, as I mentioned before, you need to have corpses to use it. The 2 corpse skills that we can use that will generate corpses for us are Unearth and Desecrate. We have an open link in our Ball Lightning setup that is already tagged with GMP, so we can throw an Unearth in there. And the Unearth generates 1 corpse by itself. The GMP provides 4 additional projectiles, so we get 5 corpses from Unearth. This is doubled with trigger bots, getting us up to our maximum of 10 corpses allowed every time cast with damage taken goes off. So there's 10 corpses there. And our other setup over here, with again, level 1 cast with damage taken, we also have Desecrate, which has a maximum of 10 corpses, but it spawns 5 just by itself, which doubled with the trigger bots becomes 10. Quick sale. Hold on one second. Okay, now where was I? I believe we were talking about Desecrate. It spawns 5 corpses. Trigger bots will double that, so we're getting our maximum of 10 corpses. So every time these cast when damage taken gems go off, we get 10 corpses here, we get 10 corpses here. That's a total of 20, and the maximum possible that we can spend if this volatile dead goes off is 18 of those corpses. So we will have our corpses available. I have another cast when damage taken support over here, and we also have 2 more links over here. So in those 5 links, we need to get all of the utility that we can out of those 5 links. Hydrosphere is probably the biggest wild card here. I have this put in here because it has a nice duration on it. It will continue to damage even after we have stopped casting. It kind of follows you around. It hits in a wide area, so it can generate a lot of hits, especially against packs. But this is something that is really that you could fill this slot in with really just about anything you want. If there's a spell that you like or you think something might be cool to try, this is the one that's kind of most up in the air. Cold Snap is very, very good because it helps you generate frenzy charges. So you get 25% chance to gain a frenzy charge when an enemy dies while in this skill's area. Now, the trigger will not cast Cold Snap unless it is off of cooldown. So you can manually cast Cold Snap and spend a frenzy charge to bypass the cooldown, but it won't do that when triggered. So you'll basically always be at your max frenzies as long as you're in the process of continuously killing stuff. And the other setup, in addition to the cast when damage taken support, we also have a power charge on crit. And I have just a couple skills here of Firestorm and Eye of Winter. And the only purpose of these 2 skills is that they hit a lot. So you're always going to be maxed out on power charges. And because they hit a lot, they'll generate a lot of ignites, they'll generate a lot of recovery, and they just help keep the machine going. In the weapons, in one weapon, we have Anger. So when you hit just so crazy high number of times as we do, flat damage can be really powerful. So Anger is just great all around, but it also makes sure that even if you don't have another source of plus fire damage to spells, this will give you that fire damage source, meaning that every single spell that you cast will have the potential to ignite. And so any crit will cause an ignite. We also get about 50% chance to ignite from the tree. Some gems, like these 2 over here that have combustionly to them, have a higher chance to ignite. And again, more ignites is more damage for us. We also have Zealotry, which for a spell crit-based build is, it just slots right in. It's perfect. It also will drop Consecrated Ground in situations where you might need it. The life regen is like whatever, but the reduced curse effect is always nice. And we have a movement skill of your choice. Flame Dash, I think, is great because we do get cooldown recovery from our Ascendancy. This feels really great to use. Really, you can use whatever you want. Flame Dash, in my opinion, is the best, but you may have a different one you like more than that. Then our other weapon, Vortex, which I put on left click. So the purpose of Vortex is it does generate hits, but it creates areas of chilling ground, which will help trigger other conditional things that happen when enemies are chilled, or when we apply a chill to an enemy. for things like Sadist or our Ascendancy classes. This is also tied to Culling Strike, just on the off chance that a Vortex happens to hit something when it's at 10% life, and you get your kill, don't have to wait for it to go down. And then this last gem, this is the true wild card. So this is the gem that is a self-cast. You can put it on right-click. Stormbrand I like because you can just drop it on bosses every few seconds. You can just throw one on them to make sure you got one. It'll trigger the cull as soon as they get down to around 10%. You can also drop Stormbrand on packs, and it'll help generate the first few hits to get our machine going. But realistically, this can be anything you want. And actually, one of the more interesting choices that you can use for this is Forbidden Rite. So Forbidden Rite causes you to take 40% of your life and 25% of your energy shield as chaos damage. And this is damage. It does count. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your machine has stopped working and you need to get it started again, you just click Forbidden Rite and it triggers everything, and you can get the machine working again. But do be careful, because it does deal a lot of damage if you don't have any chaos resistance. Mine happens to be -2 right now, so it deals, over 40% of, almost 40.8, almost 41% of my life pool to use it. But that is an option, and it is an interesting option to use. So that's all the gear. That's all the gems. Going to the passive tree for just a little bit. Again, this is in the Path to Building file in the description. This is mainly just life, wherever you can get it. Generic elemental damage, wherever you can get it. And crit stats, wherever you can get it. We do come over here and grab the Influence cluster and the Sovereignty cluster. And because we are getting a mana cluster, we can get the 12% increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. And the reason we have to get so much reservation efficiency is you see that I've got a decent pool of mana that I'm not using for anything. That's because we have to use a lot of mana. So remember that all of these are being triggered twice. We have to pay the mana cost twice. So there's 200 just for Ball Lightning alone. There's another 102 with Firestorm. That's already 300. There's another 51 with Eye of Winter. So we're now at 400. There's like 470, 540, then another 50. Yeah, so it's over 600 mana to cast all of these at the same time. I only have 516 mana, but they do not all trigger at once. There is an order to how skills trigger. When multiple cast when damage takens go off at the quote-unquote same time, there is actually an order based on what gear slot they are in and then where the skill is socketed into the item. So our Ball Lightning would actually be the first thing to go off. And usually, especially in combat, the Ball Lightning will be hitting things a lot, and you will actually end up recovering mana in between the individual triggers of all of these cast when damage taken setups. So that even though we currently don't have enough mana to cast everything, you still do get everything off. Now, you can't be too far away from what the total mana... If I were to run this mana all the way down to less than 400, then there would be a lot of instances where not everything would trigger. And if you don't have mana to trigger things, you could end up missing out on casting even your Volatile Dead or other important stuff that you need to go off. So that being said, I would not run both Anger and Zealotry until you have all of those mana reservation nodes. The 12% here, everything in this cluster here, and the 8% over here in front of influence. Once you have all of those, you can run both auras. Before that, I'd recommend dropping Zealotry, and if you're somewhere in between none of and all of those nodes, you could toy with running a smaller reservation like Skitterbots for just stronger shocks on enemies. Or the other really interesting option that some of you may still prefer and like to play around with, especially if you already have 2 curses on your gloves and don't feel like you need the 3rd curse from your ring slot. Storm Secret, Topaz Ring, combined with Herald of Thunder. So this is just another source of taking damage to help everything drive faster. But the nice quality of life about this setup is that Herald of Thunder lasts for a duration. So as you clear one pack and move to the next one, it will start hitting things before you get to that pack, and then we'll be getting the machine started and going again as you arrive to that next pack. So you do miss out on the nice damage boost from Zealotry, but you do get quite a bit of quality of life for it. So that is just an interesting setup that you can consider. Outside of that, we've already talked about how important Forethought is for mana costs. Our other important masteries is this elemental mastery of hits have 25% chance to treat enemy monster resistances as inverted. Because we really don't have many sources at all of lowering enemies' resistances, we're only penetrating, which doesn't change the enemy's resistance. This is quite a powerful node. I mean, if we're going up against an enemy that has 40% fire resistance, let's say, and we're not applying exposure or any sources of minus resistance to them, well, if we have, 35%, well, except more, we could end up with around 50% penetration. So we're getting hits as if it was -10, but if we flip that 40% to -40, and we're still penetrating 50%, then it's as if the enemy has -90 resistance. So this is a really good mastery to have. The most important mastery of all is, of course, our Curse Mastery. This is what makes everything work. The 1% of life and mana when you curse a non-cursed enemy is where all of our recovery comes from. Because we can't apply curses, enemies are always non-cursed. But we still can attempt the curse and get credit for cursing the enemy. The curse just doesn't stick. Now, the reason I like taking this Curse Mastery, specifically this one in this position on the tree, is not only is it directly in line with our normal pathing, but you do get some benefit of this node, which is reduce effective curses on you. Anywhere you can get that is nice. We also have the Consecrated Ground that we're generating, so curses end up being, not that big of a deal. That's kind of it for the passive tree. In the Ascendancy, the Ascendancy order is really going to depend on how you level. And I don't have a good suggestion, or there's not a perfect answer for how to level this build. You're getting generic elemental damage, you're getting critical strike chance, you're getting crit multi. So any hit-based spell that scales well with crit, you can go with that. Another solid option is just going Cold Dot, because Cold Dot scales well with just about 0 help. So a 4-link Vortex and a 4-link Creeping Frost, you can easily clear the campaign and get yourself to where you need to be to switch over to this build, which, something I didn't go over earlier, the highest requirement piece of gear you got is the Eye of Innocence Amulet, level 68. So that should be right around when you're finishing the campaign. So by the time you hit 68, you can put all your gear on, and you can just start with the setup you see here. You can go into the full build. I would take Bomb Specialist last. If you have all of the other three, then the build will feel fine. I think Explosives Expert is probably the best first one to take, unless you are doing a skill that would benefit from cooldown. In that case, you can take Like Clockwork first. If you're doing some kind of weird cast on crit or cast while channeling shenanigans, of course cooldown would be good here, but trigger bots would also at that point be good for that as well. But my point is by the time you hit 68, you have all three of these, and you have your gear, and you can go. Another leveling note is that this doesn't have a level requirement. You can apply this as soon as you want to. So realistically, as soon as you can path to this Curse Mastery and get a source of curse on hit, which Mark of Submission I think is somewhere around level 25 or 26, then you can already start using this interaction to keep yourself alive. And that's actually what I did. I leveled with a 4-link Vortex and a Tabula with an Unleash Ball Lightning setup. That, because again, Ball Lightning hits so frequently that it just kept your life and mana full, and I just steamrolled the campaign like that. Now, other possible setups that you could use. So I had an interesting thought of flipping the script on what we're doing here, which is just generating a bunch of low-level corpses and then using Volatile Dead to have some high-damage balls that go around and kill stuff. But I'm curious if you could flip that. And instead, in the Helm, have a high-level Desecrate and a high-level Unearth and a GMP, so the Unearth spawns its maximum corpses, and then an Empower to end up with the highest level corpses that you can generate, and then get some corpse life on the tree, things like that. And then in your level 1 cast when damage taken setups, run stuff like Volatile Dead and Detonate Dead and Cremation and all these things that explode corpses. And I'd be curious to really see what kind of damage exploding all of those high-level corpses would do. Another potential idea is you could put something like Ice Nova in the Helm and have one of your cast when damage taken setups spawn a bunch of Frost Bolts to then have the Ice Novas go off of. They would also proliferate your vortices, your vortex casts, so you would have Vortex going off everywhere. You'd have Ice Novas going off everywhere. The targeting on that might be really weird, but it also could be a cool build. You also could go with a Vol Ice Nova as well and have that as just a one-click blow up all the screens kind of option. Another one that I've toyed around with and may actually try to figure out a better way to do it, but you could do something like Blade Blast in the Helm with Blade Fall and Spell Cascade, and then Ethereal Knives and GMP to generate as many lingering blades as you can that would then be detonated by the Blade Blast. The one thing to figure out with Blade Blast, though, is that it is a pure physical spell, so you would either have to spec into just physical damage or find some way to convert that physical to any element. So maybe Fizz the Lightning support. I think we path right next to a Cold Mastery where you could get 40% of Fizz converted to Cold, but it would take some tweaking to do that. But you guys can just let your mind run wild. Just skills that work better when you have other skills supporting it. This just generic setup of the Eye of Innocence and the Katava's Thirst and the Ring and the Curse Mastery is just a generic cookie cutter stamp to do whatever you want. It gives you the ability to very frequently cast a whole cavalcade of spells and trigger one high level 4 link to go along with that. So again, if there's spells that do well with other spells, or other combinations of spells, or other effects, you can really take this and just go wild with it. If you guys have any questions, I hope I've covered enough. This is probably going to be longer than I wanted this video to be, but this is what you're going to get. Drop a question in the comments. I'll be around to answer it. If you find something else that you think works really well, please let me know. If you find any kind of other interesting interaction, please let me know. And we'll just cross our fingers and hope that this survives into next league, and that also we get new things to play with. I think it's been a while since we've really had some good new abilities and things to interact with. Trigger Bots has just been wonderful for a build like this. And honestly, I'm very, very happy with the way that this turned out, and I hope you guys have fun with it. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you guys later.